All right. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do our housekeeping so we can get started. So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the November 7th meeting of the We the People by the People for all the people. Just some housekeeping before we dive in. We're recording this call so we can post it to our YouTube channel for those who aren't able to make it. And also as a reminder or to let anyone know who may not have ever joined us before, we are a group of families, um, self-advocates, and providers who our mission is to unite families in every county of Florida to share your stories and experiences, forging connections with legislators, decision makers, and the public. Through these authentic relationships, we seek to drive systematic improvements and champion dignity, integration, and support for all people with developmental disabilities. So that's why we're here. We're here to support each other and to try to figure out how we can make positive change for our friends in Florida. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our speaker for today. It's Mr. Bradley Hunt, who is with Disability Rights, and we greatly appreciate you taking the time on your Friday afternoon to join us and explain more about CDC Plus and what we've got going on there.
Well, wonderful, and thank you for that introduction. And I really appreciate being invited to participate in this call today. I know from participating in some of the calls over the last several months that this group likes to engage in conversations, and I hope that today will be no exception to that at all. I welcome comments, questions, so I can clarify the proposal that DRF is making to APD and to the state of Florida for what we think are some very positive changes to the CDC program. Uh, just as a little background, I was a support coordinator for 30 years, had my own agency, had many CDC families that I worked with for a long time, so I'm very familiar with how the program operates and some of the strengths of the program. I think it provides a lot of good options for people in doing their self-directed services. But there's also some challenges, as there often are with any program, and things can be done if you think outside the box to try to improve the program in a revenue neutral way. And this is one of those ideas where we're able to make substantial improvements in the program and give more flexibility and more options to people and to the state of Florida in a way that doesn't cost any more money. So I know that people like to hear that, especially the Florida legislature. So what we are proposing is something that other states do already. So this is not something that is foreign to the federal government and how the waiver programs work with their self-directed options. We're proposing that Florida consider adding a new service to the CDC, and that is as a support broker. And this would be an optional service. It's not required. If people want to continue to operate in the CDC program as they have been, there's no need for them to make any changes. This provides more flexibility to those consumers that want to use self-directed services. So just a little bit of background about the CDC, big picture stuff. In fiscal year 23-24, APD served 4,690 people in the CDC program. They historically add 350 to 450 people onto the CDC every year. Those of you that are on the call that already participate in the CDC, you know that it's a highly valued program. It provides you more flexibility with the services you want to pursue, as well as your choice of providers. Some of the challenges that the CDC has right now is that there is a shortage of support consultants. The support consultant is required. And so if you can't find a support consultant, you can't be on the CDC. That's a problem. Another problem that we currently have in Florida is that there's a volunteer position that's called the CDC representative. Some of our consumers have trouble finding someone that's willing to be that volunteer. And so they're not able to participate in the CDC because of that. So by providing this optional service, we give people more flexibility and more opportunity to participate in their self-directed care. The other issue is that a lot of representatives find the complexity of the program and the requirements burdensome, cumbersome, complicated, and they need substantial support to comply with all of the requirements, such as the background screening portal with ACA. That's one of the biggest reasons that the representatives are cited as being non-compliant is they're not being keeping current on the background screening for their direct hired employees. That's a problem. The other thing, the other benefit, by adding more consumers onto the CDC because of the support that the support broker would provide, if APD added 4,000 more people onto the CDC program, it would realize significant savings in those approved budgets that could be used for other people's services. So we could add even more people onto the waiver without increasing the budget. Just a comment about the CDC representatives. Again, it's a required right now in Florida that all consumers have a volunteer CDC representative. They function very much like a payroll specialist or an HR professional. They're required for the background screenings, hiring and firing employees, processing timesheets and provider invoices, entering payroll information into APD's system every 2 weeks, managing the consumer's budget, making sure that they're not overspending, completing the purchase plan, quick updates. I've got 2 slides on this. I don't want to bore you with all the details, but I wanted to punch that point that it's a big job, and it's amazing that the program is running as well as it is with the complexity that they are confronted with. So instead of a support coordinator, if you're on the CDC, you have a support consultant. All support consultants first have to be support coordinators. And then if they want to do the CDC, they have to add that certificate and go through the training and additional workload.
Randy, can I interject something here?
Yes.
Since you have such a long history as I do as well, I was part of the original committee that drafted up CDC way back in the beginning, so I have a long history on it. On the support broker would then become a paid option that the consumer could hire to replace the representative, become
No.
like a paid support coordinator, support broker, and remove that barrier that many families in rural areas particularly, they need to provide the care, but they don't have anybody to be the rep, and so they're kind of stuck in the middle, and they're not having any high budget providers, and the money's disappearing. So is that kind of the idea, is that between that and the unbelievable expansion of the burdensomeness of CDC as a gotcha has been a true challenge. And last point was, you were involved long enough to see where CDC was originally presented as less work because the consumer would be doing it, and so it wouldn't cost as much. And what it turned out to be is you had to do all the work of a support coordinator plus the work of a consultant while being historically underpaid while we've made the program more complicated. Would that be a
Mhm.
fair summary?
That is a very fair summary. And what we're proposing is that a support broker could take on some of those tasks that the representatives now are required to do, and it provides support to that individual. This also gives um, it's other states that have done this. They don't require that there is a support consultant if they have a support broker and the client, the individual that's doing the self-directed services, is supported by the support plan team. And so those tasks that right now are required of the CDC representative, some of those tasks or all of the tasks could be assigned to the support broker. The
So the
idea is that,
consultant, the
well, the idea
support,
is that that it be flexible so that the individual can pick the supports that they need the support broker to do while the CDC representative continues to do what they do, the other
what
things.
about the consultant that right now on CDC, we pay for a consultant?
Correct.
And then, I look at the consultants to a great degree of also being the interface clerk, that they're the ones that have the keys to iConnect, and they're the ones that can process the request and forms from the representative from the consumer.
Right.
Would that be
So,
replaced or complemented, or how would that, because we still have a shortage of consultants
correct.
to onboard?
Well, the concept of having this service available is that right now there are many support consultants that are doing the yeoman's work that is supposed to be the sole responsibility of the representatives. But the support consultants are doing the work out of the goodness of their heart to help maintain that individual in the CDC. Some support coordinators are willing to take that on, but way too many are not willing to because they don't get paid any extra for all that extra work. Everyone's, they make up their own decisions about how they want to approach this. Um,
But
but
what about the fact that the consultants have all the requirements of a support coordinator as far as the number of visits plus the additional visits for consulting, which has made it a economic barrier for
right,
the qualified organizations to even want to take on that loss of the 6 month mentoring with all the double work? And is there any of that addressed? Because that seems to be a huge systemic element in even having consultants to onboard people too.
correct. Well, and I had a meeting with the Association of Qualified Organizations, and they punched that point pretty hard in that in any changes that are made, they would like to see in the rules and in the policies and procedures that are created that protection, that there isn't more work, that these cases are no more difficult than their regular caseload, so that they would be willing to take on the CDC consumers. So that's part of the hope with this is that we would realize greater efficiency and effectiveness in the program with paid support brokers uh, playing the role that a lot of those support consultants have been doing out of the goodness of their heart. Um,
So let me then, one of the biggest barriers, challenges that folks have transitioning to CDC is the 8% cut, because that makes 24 hours of care, 22 hours of care, but the whole basis of Medicaid funding was medical necessity. So if there's be an additional cost to have the support broker, is there also a recognition that some of the the savings that was aligned with the utilization rates at the time that CDC was born, that still seems to me to compromise the whole determination of medical necessity.
I understand. So here's, we haven't received feedback yet from APD, and I don't know if we have anyone on this call today from APD. But we did some calculations based on some of the public-facing financial data, also from the APD legislative budget request, the LBR, and DRF also submitted a request for information. So we used that data to do some calculations. So let me give you these figures that we have. APD in fiscal year 24-25 collected $7.419 million in administrative fees from the CDC budgets. Let me explain to you how that money is derived. The CDC program assesses 4% of their CDC services as to pay for the fiscal agent and the cost of administering the program. That the 4% is capped at $160. So if your budget is bigger and the 4% would be greater than $160, it's capped at $160. So they collected $7.419 million in 24-25. The CDC has 14 state employees working on the CDC. Now, I don't know if they've got other folks in the regions and they're using some of the money for some of those salaries, but those 14 salaries come to $1.230 million. The Mainsail contract is $1.533 million. So you can see that there's a difference of several $1 million that APD is collecting, and I don't know where the rest of that money is going.
And Bradley,
So,
that's the 4% admin plus the additional 8%.
correct. I'm just dealing with the 4% here, not the 8%. So just the 4%, we see that there's potential for the admin fees to be reduced. It's potential because, again, we haven't received a full explanation from APD on what the $7.4 million is being used for or where it's going. We don't know if it's going into the funds that are being returned to the Florida because they weren't spent on services, if they're in the services budget. We don't know where that money's going, and hopefully APD will be able to tell us. But if it's excess monies that they're collecting, then it would make sense that we could reduce the 4% fee. I can't give you an opinion or any information about what flexibility there might be on the 8%. It's my understanding in the original submission with the federal government that that was one of the things that was required. I don't know if that has changed, if it's still in place, or if there is some flexibility with how Florida chooses to do that going forward.
My
I don't
experience with
know.
that number was historically at the time that CDC was first brought on board, 92% of the regular waiver funded dollars were being utilized, and in order to maintain a revenue neutrality, they said then CDC couldn't use more than the other program was using. The issue I
And
have from a
mhm,
protection and advocacy perspective
mhm,
is, does that 8% compromise the definition of medical necessity
mm,
in the determination of funding, which I think is a big question. Now, the truth is, historically, particularly in the last several years, the I budget has been utilized less than like 92% with all the post-COVID provider issues and all those
mhm.
things. So for now, you lose less money with an 8% cut than you may lose with services that disappear on the I budget. But ultimately, it's still a barrier because particularly CDC, I think serves the most behaviorally, medically, and developmentally complex folks in the state, that many of them cannot be provided the services they need by a traditional provider pool, and it builds this custom flexibility into it. So,
Yeah.
um,
Well, Tom, I appreciate you refreshing my memory on the 8%, and you are correct. You dusted off some cobwebs way back in the recesses of my mind on that 8%. So thank you for that.
Yeah, we don't
So
call him the OG for nothing. Just FYI.
this is an area of particular passion because I think that this has been so powerful to families, but
Oh,
the
absolutely.
administrative aspects, we worked really hard a couple years ago to make it that every single family every year was informed that CDC was an option. But simultaneously, there's been a lack of an option because of the lack of provider capacity, the complexity, and those things. But when I serve on the quality advisory, the data of the outcome measures, every single measure, CDC scores higher than the
Hmm.
budget on the outcomes. So the question I was asking is if we just sent out 5,600 invitations and half of those people accepted, and 10% of those people, which is about the current incident rate between the iBudget and CDC, chose to go to CDC, that's 250 people.
Hmm.
I'm concerned about capacity, responsiveness, timeliness. If that happened, if we're are informing them, recognize that many of them may be in unserved populations where iBudget
Hmm.
provider bases don't even exist. Some of these are questions to be asked, concerns to be observed. I have a tremendous depth of respect with Disability Rights of Florida and its long history of assisting programs or remembering what the intent and purpose of the program was and helping them find a way to accomplish it.
Hmm. Absolutely. I see a hand raised.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe
Rebecca.
we could kind of
Sure.
transition over to some questions. I know we had some in the chat as well too. So who was the first that had the hand raised? I missed it. I'm so sorry.
Can I ask you a quick question? This is Fina. I'm a provider and I have quite a few patients in the CDC program. And I mean, what I'm asking is we have a lot of patients that have direct deposits. And as we get those direct deposits into our bank, when we print those direct deposits out, it just gives me a price, like $243.90. It doesn't tell me the name, who they're paying. It doesn't tell me what date of service. It doesn't tell me anything. So what we're doing right now is keeping a large spreadsheet of every claim that we sent out, and we're playing the matching game. So what happens is that we run into a problem is if a patient is behind 2 months, and we finally get a payment, we're not sure what month they're paying. So obviously, we'll post it to the old payment, and then we'll tell the patient, well, you still have this data service open. We send it to them, and then they come back to us and say, oh no, that's already been paid. It's because we posted it to the wrong data service. But those sheets that are coming over from the bank is not giving us zero. Now, when I called CDC, they said, oh, that's the representative responsibility to send you the check stub. And most of them do send us a copy of the check stub. But then you got a few of them that, forget or don't do it. But if there's any possibility that they could add that information to that receipt that we're getting, that's one less work, one less thing the representative has to do. And it makes my life easier because sometimes we got two patients that get the exact same thing. So the amount is the same. So now we're saying, okay, is it this patient that paid or is it this patient that paid?
So you're
Now
talking
we got to
about
call
the
CDC and find out,
yeah.
who are they paying?
So you're talking about the payments that you're getting from Mainsel, the fiscal agent, that you can't identify who the
That's what they
patients are
call,
for.
yes, that the
Mhm.
the direct deposits that
And
go
you get
into my bank.
and you get no other communication from Mainsail. And so you're told that you have to get the information from the representatives.
That's correct. And they said
Okay.
they have to send us a check stub. And I'm like, is it that difficult to add the patient's
Mhm.
name and the date of service that they paid, or an invoice number,
Mhm.
or anything to tell us who they're
Mhm.
paying?
Or
Mhm.
I
automate
only need a name and a date of service. That's
if
all
they
I
Right.
need.
automated this check stub, so when it was paid, you got sent a copy of what you just got paid, so you had it identified, and the consumer who, like my daughter, may physically it's a nightmare with paper and the keystrokes in comparison. We could automate some of this stuff that would make it that
You
much
understand what I'm
easier.
trying to say? If I would show you
Mhm.
what they send me, it's a bunch of
I
numbers
I
and it
understand.
says CDC and the amount. That's it.
Yep.
So I
I
have
got it.
no
I
idea
understand.
where to post it to, what to do with it. I mean,
Yeah.
it's
So
nothing, it's not a big deal, but it would help a lot and put less
mhm.
work on the representative worrying about sending us a check stub.
I got it. I
Yeah,
understand.
perfect. Thank you.
I think we also had a question from Nancy Cobb. She wanted to know, is the support broker optional? If you wanted to, maybe elaborate a little bit more there.
Sure, absolutely. Our proposal is that it is optional. Not only is it optional, but the tasks that are assigned specifically to the support broker would be determined by the person doing the self-directed services. So there may be some activities that are retained by the CDC representative, such as the hiring and firing decisions or the selection of the direct hired employee. That, it's going to be individually determined. So there's a
So there'd be a
menu
menu of services or of
menu
activities
of
that you
services
you'd
and
assign.
activities, right, that the CDC representatives currently have to do that can be assigned to the support broker instead. Uh, so it's flexible. Now, we do conceive, and other states do this also, there are certain circumstances where it could be a required service. So, for instance, when a CDC representative has not been maintaining the background screening correctly, or they haven't managed the budget appropriately. APD right now, their only two choices are to require a corrective action plan or to kick them off of the CDC. So this gives them another option instead of kicking them off the CDC of making the support broker a required service, which we think in many instances would be preferred for the consumer.
Could you further expand on what differences and impacts would this make on the consultant?
So our intention and our hope is that it reduces the workload on the consultants, which will make it easier for coordinators to agree to take on the role. So
You
more
mean
people,
mostly about things like the training of the consumer would be shifted more towards the broker as
correct,
opposed to that, and which
and
is
those
one of the,
tasks. So right now, the support consultants, they get all of the quick updates, they get the um, purchase plans. Anytime there's a corrective action plan that's required, they're in between all that. And they're having to recheck all the calculations that the CDC representatives do. If they're not correct, they have to send them back to the representatives to get them corrected. All that back and forth is administrative burden that they don't have for other people. And they don't get compensated for it, so they don't want to do it. So we're hoping that having the service available, it'll take those burdens off of them, and so more people will be willing to do it.
and in conjunction with that, Bradley, we were also talking about kind of a portal that gave a status so that if you had something sent in, there was a status that had been received, that all the pieces were there, that the
Mhm.
decision was made by this point, because there's been a lot of delay or unresponsiveness to things like
Or,
quick
or,
updates and things like that.
and it's a complicated, nuanced program. It wasn't intended to be that way, but it's ended up being that way.
Yeah.
And the state office because of all the errors and the back and forth, the corrective action plans that are being required, they're asking to have more money to hire more people to handle all the problems. And our proposal is, let's have fewer problems.
Well, I also say that you suggested that the
Hey.
$7.4 million that is not all being utilized or that we're aware of, and if there's money for staffing needs, maybe it's already there.
Yeah, I really believe that if we provided a professional provision for the support broker role, that there would be tremendous efficiencies resulted because of just the lack of errors and the back and forth with APD. It'll run so much smoother.
Do you have an
because-
idea on
Hey.
pricing, a monthly?
Hey,
monthly
Tom.
cost? Yeah,
I'm so sorry to cut you off, but poor Rebecca keeps waving her hand every time there's a slight break in the conversation, so.
that's fine. I'll just ask this last question. Do you have a price projected cost per month?
So we've done some exploring about what a human resource professional would cost. We've also looked at what the utilization rates are in other states for this role. An ongoing basis, it's usually about 4 hours. We're thinking that's going to be about 200 a month for the broker on that utilization. The individual doing the self-directed services could have in our proposal, and again, these are talking points that we would have to sit down and flesh out with APD. There's going to have to be a rulemaking process. Anytime they make a change to the CDC handbook, they have to go through a rulemaking process. So all this is going to have to be fleshed out in more detail. But our proposal is that if there's turnover, if there's a direct hired employee that quits, well, now there's a need to do recruitment and bring another person on board. So if they have reserve in their budget and they need more hours from the support broker, they can get it if there's a reserve.
Thank you. Go ahead, Amanda.
All right, Rebecca.
Yeah.
You're muted.
Yep. Rebecca, you're muted.
I wanted to say thank you for allowing those for whom the CDC Plus program is working for our unique kids to be able to continue with it as is. That's a tremendous, it's been a concern of mine that this might go away or we might be forced in some kind of different program. And for some of us, this program has worked very well. Yes, it requires work, it requires diligence and all that. I do have one question about, I don't understand why. And so thank you for allowing it to continue and not forcing us into something else.
Mhm.
One thing I don't understand, I understand the importance of maintaining a budget, absolutely. And there should be no excuse for overspending one's budget. I have no problems with that. What I don't understand is why there is not more flexibility allowed within a month of approved services. For example, if my son was sick for a week or had to miss his adult day program, and he requires somebody with him all the time, has a bunch of services, why couldn't I spend more of my monthly on personal care, since he has less he's going to need spent on transportation or going to the adult day program because he's not able to? Now, I know there's this provision of you can have this, yes, you can apply for this emergency change, but this is never quick. This quick fix is not quick. It's by the time the quick fix takes up place, the month is over. And the quick, I don't understand why I am not allowed within approved services. I understand completely it has to be done by approved providers. The service has to be approved. It has to be in his plan. But if he has like $4,000 in a month, why can't he shift spending as his needs might change within the month?
A lot of it, so as a support consultant, I would have to sit down with you in that purchase plan and help you figure out a solution for that. And so it's possible that you can allocate some money into savings, for instance, so that money is readily available. There are some options within the purchase plan that gives you that flexibility, and I would just suggest that you get with your support consultant to try to figure out how to create that greater flexibility.
Well, okay, now, so if he has money in his savings plan, I can, which he does, I can
Mhm.
actually use
Yeah.
that savings
Mhm.
to
Sure.
spend more than
Absolutely.
what is allotted that month for personal care, is what you're saying?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. That's very helpful.
You're welcome.
And those authorized services in your savings plan should be showing up on when you're submitting payroll, you should see both regular and savings dollars in that area.
Okay. What other questions do we have?
We actually had one more from the chat, from Yolanda. She said to clarify, if you wouldn't mind, are you proposing this to be a required service or an available service? Excuse me.
An optional available service.
A required service or an available, like an optional service?
Not required, but
Okay.
except it could be required in certain circumstances, which would have to be fleshed out in policy. So, for instance, I gave an example earlier of where in our current setup, there's a CDC representative, and there may be some recurring problems like not managing the budget correctly, not maintaining background screenings according to the law. So if there have been some recurring problems, APD could require, for 6 months or for a year or indefinitely, that they use a support broker to do those functions instead.
So, Brad, I have a situation with somebody that the primary caregiver is sick. The daughter has been the representative, but may need to step in the role of caregiver while mom is sick. But you can't do both. So would this allow that option that a support broker could step into that role as representative so she could convert over to become a provider?
So let me reframe that. So it's the consumer, the client, that's doing the self-directed services. So in some states that use a support broker, as we are proposing, there isn't a CDC representative in all those cases. In those cases, the individual is doing the self-directed services with the support of a support broker, and the support plan team is assisting the individual with making their decisions about what the support broker is going to do and what other people on the team are going to do.
This is an individual that has an IQ in the 20s, is nonverbal, is absolutely severe and profound and very medically complex. So the self-direction isn't there because it's just
I
not
see.
there.
I see.
So in a situation where you have that small circle of support that's very complicated, would that be, or is that something that could be considered that
Well,
a
so
representative could become a short-term provider and use the
what,
broker to fill that
right.
hole?
So one of our concerns, and other states have come up with some ways of addressing this also. One of our concerns is for the potential conflict of interest. So for instance, I've had questions from the support coordinators and support consultants if they could be a support broker for another client that's not theirs in their own agency or another agency. And we're just very concerned about the potential conflict of interest. And so in that scenario, I would also be concerned about a conflict of interest. So I think that's going to require a discussion with the policymakers and the rulemaking process on how to handle those situations where it's apparent that the individual, the consumer that's doing the self-directed services doesn't lacks the capacity to consent. And so in those cases where it is highly apparent, there may need to be some policies developed to help avoid those conflicts of interest. So
So
there may
Brownie,
need
for
to
the
be
last several
some.
years, we've been involved in writing legislation and being deeply involved. So I encourage you to reach out to us further, engage us in this process. So you have some of the best day-to-day experts in CDC on this call.
Yeah. So for instance, back in 2006, I think it was, um, there was a policy that came out, and it's actually embedded in 393, but the language has changed a little bit, and the policy that APD developed at that time is now considered non-rule policy, but yet the language in 393 still exists, and that's for there to be someone set up as a designated representative. And that's a unique term only for the APD waiver, not to be confused with a Social Security representative or representative payee, but for an APD designated representative. So it may be that part of this training for those instances that maybe someone needs to be designated as the designated representative by the support plan team in those instances. That may be one solution.
Very good. Well, we got into the weeds today.
Yes, we did.
Any other questions? Other people raising their hands, swinging around, Amanda?
I had one more from Nancy that she said generally is more work, effort, time required of consultant or coordinator.
Right now, it's right. It does require a lot more work from the support consultant to take on a CDC client. Was that the point? I'm not sure I heard the question.
Yes, I think that's what it was. So I'll just reread it. She said, generally is more work, effort, and
Mhm.
time required of consultant
Mhm.
or coordinator.
It is.
Well,
It's
Bradley,
quite
we'd like to see a work group established that could look at combination of support coordinators, consultants, providers, and families and staff sitting down together and looking at how do we streamline this? How do we simplify it again? How do we get it to be compliant regulatorily, but accessible? Because if you actually look statistically at the other actual self-directed, self-representatives on consumer-directed care, it's very small. It's single digits in the number of self-directed representatives.
Mhm.
And so I think there's some efforts to be made on that. Certainly there is so much more good than bad with CDC. We're working hard to also make sure there's an awareness that this is an important alternative, and it's
Right.
very important,
Well,
particularly in rural and underserved areas.
and I think it's important to discuss that there is a real clear difference between APD's CDC Plus waiver program and the PDO self-directed option under managed care. And they're very different. And that includes when the ICMC waiver uh, includes a self-directed option, it's going to the plans are that it's going to mirror the current PDO that's operated like for CMS, which is vastly different than APD's waiver program. So I think that's an important distinction. I highly value this one. I think it's a very good program. We just need to fix some of the bugs.
We love it. We're grateful that, the long history of disability rights of Florida and the role of protecting and advocating the beneficiaries of these programs, attracting, good people like you to that organization has been why we've been able to realize many of these things throughout the years. So let's keep working together. Sounds like something that, organizationally we can help flush out some, we can help market it and inform legislators. We have a freedom of speech. We are unconstrained advocates as a nature, and that provides us some freedom to um, not look over our shoulder and to be
Mhm.
able to be free. But informed advocacy is far more effective, and we're very proud of how our efforts continue to educate the legislators, to educate the policymakers, to put a true face with it. And it's not just a diagnosis, just not a service code, but it could be a life-saving game changer for a family, for an individual. And I know we're kind of tooting our own horn a little bit on that, but that's a very important part of how we've been impactful. And we want to continue to do
Absolutely.
that.
Absolutely.
So
Brooke,
Sandy, oh, sorry, go ahead.
look,
Okay,
go ahead.
so I
Okay,
was just,
so
I'm in the learning process.
I was just gonna read
Okay.
what you wrote, Sandy.
Okay, I'm in the learning process of policy making, and is this a proposal that you're proposing strictly can be done through rulemaking, or is there legislative action has to be taken? And if so, how far along are you? It sounds like you're just starting to flesh things out. I don't,
So
I'm wanting
our
to know because I may
proposal-
be meeting with my representative soon again.
Okay, sure. That's a great question. I love the question. So we have not developed a fully fleshed out policy for implementing this because I think there's a lot of people that want to have input. And there's a lot of contingencies that even though I have lots of years of experience, Tom has lots of years of experience, we don't know everything. So so this takes a village to make good policy. And so I like Tom, I think it would be good to have a work group that could meet with APD. In terms of the legislative action that may be required, I'm not aware of anything in this proposal that would require legislative action. APD on their own, if they chose, could move forward with a proposed rule and let us weigh in on it. They could form a work group and invite people to participate. But if they choose not to move forward, uh, we can certainly take it to the legislature and ask them to weigh in on these changes, and they can require the agency to develop the process to implement this.
That's the approach we've been taking more often than not right in the last several years with better responsiveness. Sometimes the guidance of legislation is required for agencies to develop the leadership and courage necessary to do that.
Hmm. Well, and so you know that about a month ago, we had a conversation with the leadership at APD. They were the first group that we presented to because we thought, out of respect, they needed to hear it from us first.
Right.
Makes sense.
We've also presented the concept to the Clarent Quality Council. We mentioned this at the most recent DD Council meeting, so those folks are aware. We haven't presented a long discussion like you folks have today, but that's coming. We're going to have that conversation. And we look forward to being able to sit down with anyone that wants to try to move this forward and let's make it happen. I think it's a very good proposal. I'm very pleased with what we've discovered and put together.
Bradley, we're thankful for your expertise and for joining us today. And we got more work to do together, it looks like.
It looks like it.
Amanda, what do you got next?
That's pretty much all I have for today. I don't have, one of the other, well, actually, I take that back. So, let's see, where was it? I saw it.
We could open the floor for anybody who's got any other other questions or comments that they want to share while you're.
Yeah, if anyone else has
You know.
anything that they want to ask,
Let's go ahead and maybe have people raise their hand and then we can unmute
Mhm.
one at a time if people
Great.
have community announcements or things that we want to, or questions, final thoughts.
let's see, do we have anything going on in,
I
on
got
the
a quick
legislative
question.
side?
I got a quick, Mr. Hunt, if you could, based on what we talked about, if you could follow up to see if what you find out, and if you need some information from me to send over to you to make it easier, maybe an email or something, so we could communicate that if you have any questions, you could always, if you need samples of what I'm talking about, I'll be more than happy to do that.
Let me do this. I'm going to type my email address into the chat, and then you can reach out to me directly.
Proactively perfect. Perfect.
All
Thank
right,
you. We
Melody has a question.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I had received a comment from another individual on the Treasure Coast here. I'm trying to open it up. And I'll just read it as her comment, and maybe you can go a little further with it. So this is a mom of a son who's been on consumer directed care in Florida. She says he began in the program when it was experimental research program with the Wood Johnson Foundation, the Maryland University. He was chosen for the experimental group. I have researched the federal guidelines extensively for this program and can attest the federal guidance state all medically necessary services are to be provided for individuals with consumer-directed care programs. Florida does not choose to adhere to this guideline. Instead, Florida chooses to mandatorily remove 8% of the medically necessary services. Per Bradley Hunt's research and PowerPoint, that 8% removed from enrolled CDC Plus providers for fiscal year 2023 was 17, what you stated, 946,524. This PowerPoint states that those funds were utilized to fund an additional 4,000 CDC Plus clients. My concern is the legality of Medicaid services that are funded for individuals are being diverted. I feel this is fraud and the money laundering. Secondly, my issue of concern is Agency for Persons with Disability presently has a line item legislation funding for administration of their programs, yet they are choosing to charge a rate over the fiscal agent rate for administration of the CDC Plus program. This further depletes the medically funded for CDC clients. Let's protect those who can't protect themselves and follow the law to ensure medically necessary services are administered legally. So I think you touched on this, but I don't know, maybe she has other points that you might want to reconsider or discuss further. Thank you.
Yeah, if I could provide clarification on the numbers. The $17.9 million that was projected was based on the savings for an additional 4,000 people coming onto the CDC
Okay.
program based on the current average CDC budget.
Okay.
Okay. But otherwise, I understand your point. I think it's an interesting point about the medically necessary services. I will do some thinking about that.
Thank you.
Anybody else for the cause?
Okay, I think that is pretty much everything. So
Someone
wanna-
posted if he's going to make available his proposal at some point, the slides.
oh, okay.
Sure, I'll be glad to. Why don't I email them to Stephanie?
Perfect.
That's perfect.
Okay.
Excellent. And so if we're coming up on 4 o'clock, I want to say thank you to you, Mr. Brad, for joining us today and sharing information. I'm not going to lie, I'm not well versed in CDC Plus, but I know others who are. So I do appreciate you sharing their information for those that it affects. And hopefully, you know, if once this moves forward or starts moving forward, you'll call on us to help spread the word and talk to our legislators, because that's what we do best. So
Very good.
we appreciate your time. I appreciate everyone, all 41 participants, for joining us today on this Friday afternoon. We genuinely appreciate all of you for spending time with us and for your great questions and everything. And I know I'm no Stephanie, but thanks for allowing me to to host a little today. So I enjoy seeing everyone and thank you. And I hope you all have a fabulous weekend. And I know we have a meeting next week, but I'm not quite sure who's up on deck for speaking. But as y'all know, Stephanie will put the emails out and the posts on the Facebook page and the group and all over the place. So thank you again, everyone, and have a fabulous weekend.
Have a great weekend, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you for the
Hey, see you, Brad.